The tracks appeared overnight, deep, heavy, leading straight to ground that couldn't be crossed. Eleanor Garrison knelt in the frost beside them, her breath misting in the dawn cold. The prints were fresh, maybe 4 hours old. She touched the edge of one with her gloved fingers. The frost hadn't yet formed inside the depression. Recent then, very recent. 2 things she understood immediately. Someone had violated her land, and whoever it was knew things about this mountain that even she didn't. Elle stood slowly, her joints stiff from the November cold. She was 38 years old, but felt older on mornings like this. The high country did that to a person, aged them, weathered them like the rocks themselves. She studied the tracks more carefully now. 3 sets, 3 different men judging by the boot sizes and stride lengths. Heavy boots, well made, the kind that cost real money, not the worn-down footwear of drifters or casual hunters. The tracks led east toward the restricted section of her property, the deep valley where elk came to water year-round. The place she'd specifically chosen to leave, wild, untouched. Elle followed the tracks for 20 yards before she found the first real problem. The tripwires. She'd strung them across the main game trails 3 weeks ago. Thin gut line nearly invisible with small brass bells attached. A simple alarm system. If anything larger than a deer crossed the trail, the bells would ring. She'd hear them from the cabin even half a mile away. The wires had been cut, not broken, not snapped by accident, cut clean through with a blade. Elle knelt again, examining the severed ends. The cut was surgical precise. Someone who knew what to look for. Someone trained. Professional work. She felt the first stirring of something cold in her chest. Not fear. She'd left fear behind years ago. This was something else. Recognition, maybe. The understanding that she'd stumbled onto something bigger than a few poachers taking deer for winter meat. The tracks continued past the cut wires, moving with purpose deeper into the valley. Elle followed them, her hand resting instinctively on the rifle slung across her back. A Sharps .45-70 caliber, her husband's rifle, the only thing of his she'd kept besides his name. The morning sun climbed higher, burning off the frost. The tracks became clearer in the softening ground. Elle counted the steps between prints, noting the pace. These men hadn't been hurrying. They'd walked with confidence, like they owned the place, like they'd been here before. That thought bothered her more than anything else. She'd bought this land 6 months ago. 2,000 acres of Colorado mountain wilderness, so remote that the nearest neighbor lived 12 miles down a road that became impassable in winter. She'd chosen it specifically because nothing human should be moving through here. Just elk, bears, mountain lions, the things that belonged, not men with expensive boots and sharp knives. The trail led her through a natural corridor between 2 massive granite outcroppings. The rocks rose like walls on either side, funneling everything toward the valley below. Elle had walked this path a dozen times since buying the land. It was one of the main routes the elk used to reach the water. At the end of the corridor, the ground dropped away suddenly. The valley opened up below her, lush and green despite the season. A year-round stream cut through the center, fed by snowmelt from the peaks above. The water never froze, not even in the deepest winter. It was perfect habitat, protected, hidden, violated. Elle stopped at the edge of the drop-off and stared down at what she'd found. Blood. Not a lot. Not the kind of massive spill that came from a kill. But enough. Dark drops on the pale rocks near the stream, scattered in a pattern that suggested struggle, panic. Something had been shot here. Wounded, maybe. Driven to run before dying somewhere deeper in the woods. Elle climbed down the slope carefully, using the rocks for handholds. The blood was still tacky to the touch, not quite dried. 12 hours old, maybe less. She followed the blood trail for 30 yards before losing it in the thick underbrush. But she'd seen enough. The pattern told the story. A bad shot, or maybe a deliberate one. Something designed to wound, not kill cleanly. That made her angry. Elle had hunted in her younger days. Everyone in these mountains did. But you killed clean. You respected the animal. You didn't let it suffer. She straightened, scanning the valley with the practiced eye of someone who'd spent years reading terrain, looking for things that didn't belong. It took her 3 minutes to find the hunting blind. It was well made, she had to give them that. Constructed from deadfall and camouflage netting, positioned to command a perfect view of the main watering hole. The blind was fresh, maybe a week old. built by someone who understood fieldcraft and concealment. Elle approached it slowly, rifle now in her hands, not expecting anyone to be inside but careful anyway. Caution was a habit she'd learned to trust. The blind was empty, but not abandoned. Inside she found spent shell casings, expensive ammunition, the kind that cost $12 per round. High-powered rifle judging by the caliber. Serious money behind this operation. Elle collected the casings, noting the manufacturer markings. These weren't the bullets of weekend hunters taking deer for meat. This was precision equipment, premium grade. Someone was paying top dollar to kill on her land. The question was, what were they hunting? Eleanor Garrison had never intended to return to the high country. After everything that had happened 5 years ago, she'd planned to disappear completely. Move to some coastal town, maybe? Somewhere flat and crowded where a person could get lost in the noise of other people's lives. But John's dying words had changed everything. The high country, he'd whispered, blood bubbling on his lips. They're in the high country. Finish it. She'd held him while he died there on the rocks where his horse had supposedly thrown him. Held him and promised. Promised she'd finish whatever he'd started. It had taken her 5 years to understand what he'd meant. 5 years of running from the memory. 5 years of trying to be someone other than Eleanor Kincaid, the woman who'd tracked outlaws across 3 territories. The woman they'd called the Ghost because she could find anyone anywhere and bring them in. Dead or alive, usually dead. She'd left that life behind after the botched raid in Santa Fe. Too much blood. Too many bodies. A 16-year-old boy she'd shot because he'd reached for a gun. A kid who should have been in school, not dying in an alley with her bullet in his chest. She'd turned in her badge that same day. Married John Garrison 3 months later. Tried to build a normal life. But normal hadn't lasted. John had been investigating something when he died. She'd known that much. He'd been secretive about it, disappearing for days at a time into the mountains, coming back tired, worried, telling her it was nothing, just following up on old rumors about cattle rustlers. She'd believed him because she'd wanted to. Now, standing in the blood-spattered valley with expensive shell casings in her hand, she understood. This was what John had been chasing, this operation, whatever it was, and it had killed him for getting too close. Elle's hands tightened on the rifle. The cold thing in her chest wasn't recognition anymore. It was something hotter, older. The feeling she'd tried to leave behind when she turned in her badge. The feeling that said someone needs to pay for this. She spent the rest of the morning following the valley deeper into her property. The terrain grew rougher, the vegetation thicker. This was the section she'd never fully explored. Too remote, too dangerous. The kind of country that could kill you if you weren't careful. Perfect for hiding things. The stream led her to a second watering hole, this one larger and more open. Natural salt lick nearby, worn smooth by years of animal tongues. This was prime habitat. The kind of place every creature in the mountains would visit eventually. The kind of place where someone could wait and guarantee a kill. Elle found the second hunting blind without even trying. It sat on a ridge overlooking the water, positioned for a clean downward shot. Professional setup. Whoever built this knew what they were doing. But it was what she found beyond the blind that made her blood run cold. Drag marks, deep gouges in the soil where something heavy had been hauled away from the kill site. The tracks led away from the water, moving uphill through the trees. Elle followed them, her pulse quickening. The trail took her a quarter mile before she found the road. Not a road, really, more like a hidden track, barely visible unless you were standing right on it. Someone had carefully placed brush and fallen logs to conceal it from any angle except ground level. Elle pushed aside a section of deadfall and stared. Wagon tracks. Fresh ones. Multiple sets suggesting several vehicles had used this route recently. The earth was worn down by repeated traffic, the kind of wear that came from months of regular use. This wasn't new. This operation had been running for a long time, long before she'd bought the land. Maybe even when the previous owner, Bill Hutchkins, was still alive. Elle followed the hidden road for half a mile, moving carefully now. Alert. The road connected to the main Forest Service route 3 miles to the east, a perfect supply line. Invisible from the main road, accessible only to those who knew it existed. At a bend in the hidden road she found the processing station. Someone had constructed a sturdy wooden frame between 2 trees. Pulleys and chains hung from the crossbeam, designed for hanging large game. The ground beneath was stained dark with old blood. The smell of decay lingered despite the cold. This wasn't a temporary hunting camp. This was permanent infrastructure, built for processing significant quantities of wildlife. Elle circled the frame slowly, examining everything. Scattered around the area were plastic tarps, industrial garbage bags, and butcher knives, evidence of serious meat preparation. But what disturbed her most were the piles. Small collections of antler tips, bear claws, what appeared to be mountain lion teeth sorted and arranged like inventory. Trophy parts, the valuable pieces that could be sold to collectors. The worthless meat had been discarded, left to rot. This wasn't hunting for food. This was harvesting animals for profit, taking the valuable parts and leaving the rest. Elle felt sick. She'd seen illegal hunting operations before back in her marshal days, but nothing on this scale, nothing this organized. This was industry. Cold, efficient, and utterly without conscience. She stood there for a long moment, breathing through her mouth to avoid the smell. Thinking. John had found this. He'd discovered this operation and tried to expose it. And they'd killed him for it, made it look like an accident, a horse throwing its rider. Tragic but not suspicious. No one had questioned it, no one had investigated, except now she was here, and she wasn't going anywhere. Elle turned and headed back toward her cabin, moving fast now. She had work to do, evidence to gather, a plan to make. But first she needed to know more. She needed to go to town. Silver Ridge sat in a wide valley 12 miles from Elle's property. Population maybe 300, most of them ranchers or miners. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone and strangers were noticed. Elle rode in just after noon, her horse Rebel moving at an easy walk down the main street. The town was quiet. A few wagons parked outside the general store. Some men loading supplies at the freight office. People noticed her. They always did. The widow Garrison. The woman who lived alone up in the high country. The one nobody really knew. Elle tied Rebel outside the county land office and went inside. The clerk was a thin man named Harrison, maybe 50 years old. He looked up from his ledgers and gave her a polite nod. "Mrs. Garrison, don't see you in town much." "Need to look at some land records," Elle said. "The properties surrounding mine." Harrison's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. "Any particular reason?" "Curious about my neighbors." He hesitated, then pulled out the appropriate books, spread them on the counter for her to examine. Elle studied the records carefully. 3 of the 4 properties neighboring hers had changed hands in the past 18 months. All sold to the same buyer, Denver Pacific Land and Cattle Company. She'd never heard of them. "This company," Elle said. "They local." "Denver-based," Harrison said. "Don't know much about them. They bought through a law firm. Quiet sales. No public advertising." "All 3 properties in 18 months." "That's right. Seems like somebody's buying up a lot of land." Harrison's face was carefully neutral. "Land changes hands. That's business." Elle met his eyes. "You know anything else about this company?" "No, ma'am. Just what's in the records." He was lying. Not well, but enough. There was something he wasn't saying. Elle let it go. For now. She thanked him and left the office, stepping back into the afternoon sunlight. The street was busier now, more people moving around, more eyes watching her. She walked down to the church at the end of town, a simple building, white-painted wood with a small bell tower. Father Matthias Cooper had been the priest here for 20 years. If anyone knew the town's secrets, it would be him. She found him in the church garden tending to some late-season vegetables. He looked up when she approached, his weathered face breaking into a smile. "Mrs. Garrison, this is a pleasant surprise." "Father, what brings you to town? Everything all right up on the mountain?" Elle got straight to it. "Bill Hutchkins. What can you tell me about him?" The smile faded. Father Matthias set down his gardening tool and stood slowly brushing dirt from his hands. "Bill's been dead 6 months. Why are you asking?" "I bought his land. I'd like to know more about the man who owned it before me." The priest studied her for a long moment. "Bill Hutchkins was a complicated man. Good at heart, I think. But weak. He made choices he regretted." "What kind of choices?" Father Matthias looked away toward the mountains visible in the distance. "The kind we confess on our deathbeds. The kind we can't take back." "Did he confess to you?" "You know I can't answer that. Can't or won't." The priest turned back to her, his expression grave. "Bill Hutchkins died with a heavy conscience, Mrs. Garrison. That's all I can tell you. But I will say this. If you're asking questions about his land, you should be very careful. Some secrets are kept by the living, some by the dead. Both kinds haunt us." Elle felt a chill that had nothing to do with the November air. "If you know something, Father, something that might help me understand what's happening on my land." "I know what I heard in confession," he said quietly, "and that stays between a man and God. But I also know that Bill tried to make things right before he died. He left a letter, a sealed confession of sorts." "Where is it?" "In my keeping. He asked me to give it to someone who might need it, someone who might be able to finish what he couldn't." Elle's heart was pounding now. "Am I that someone?" Father Matthias looked at her for a long moment. "Come back tomorrow. Let me pray on this tonight. If the Lord guides me to give it to you, I will." It wasn't what she wanted, but she nodded. "Tomorrow, then." She left the church and walked back toward the main street. Her mind was racing now, pieces starting to connect. Bill Hutchkins had known something he'd tried to confess before dying, something about her land. She was so lost in thought that she almost didn't notice the man watching her from across the street. Deputy Thomas Wheeler, Silver Ridge's only law enforcement. A tired-looking man in his 50s wearing a badge that looked too heavy for him. Their eyes met. Wheeler's face went pale. He turned and walked away, quickly disappearing into the saloon. Elle stopped watching him go. That was interesting. The deputy was scared, and she hadn't even talked to him yet. She found Sarah Whitmore at the boarding house studying drawings in a leather journal. The young woman looked up when Elle entered the common room, her face lighting with recognition. "Mrs. Garrison, I was hoping to see you." "Miss Whitmore?" Sarah gestured to a chair. "Please sit. Can I get you some coffee?" "I'm fine." Elle sat anyway, studying the younger woman. Sarah was maybe 29, with intelligent eyes and ink-stained fingers. A naturalist from back east, she'd told people, studying elk migration patterns. "I wanted to thank you for letting me work on your land," Sarah said. "The elk herd up there is magnificent. I've documented 17 different individuals so far. You've been on my property, just the eastern section near the main trail. I hope that's all right. I should have asked permission first." "What have you seen?" Sarah hesitated. "The elk mostly. Some bear sign, mountain lion tracks. It's pristine habitat, Mrs. Garrison. Exactly what I was hoping to study." "Anything else?" The younger woman's expression changed, became guarded. "Why do you ask?" "Because I found evidence of illegal hunting on my land this morning. Professional operation. I'm wondering if you've seen anything unusual." Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she reached into her journal and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I did some sketches last week, up near the northern ridge. I saw, well, see for yourself." Elle unfolded the paper. Sarah's drawings were good detailed. They showed 3 men with rifles, expensive gear, standing near what looked like a processing station. "When was this?" "5 days ago. I was up early trying to catch the elk at dawn. I heard voices and hid. These men came through. They scared me, Mrs. Garrison. The way they talked, the way they carried themselves. They weren't regular hunters." "Did they see you?" "I don't think so. I stayed hidden until they left, but I haven't gone back up there since." Elle studied the drawings. The details were good enough to be useful. The men's faces weren't clear, but their equipment was. High-end rifles, tactical gear. "Can I keep this?" "Of course." "Mrs. Garrison, should I be worried? I mean, is it safe for me to continue my research?" Elle looked at her. Saw a young woman trying to do good work, trying to study and protect wildlife, the kind of person who didn't deserve to get caught up in whatever this was. "No," Elle said honestly. "It's not safe. These men are dangerous. Whatever they're doing up there, they're willing to kill to protect it." Sarah's face went pale. "Kill, you mean?" "I mean, my husband died investigating this same operation 5 years ago, and I'm going to finish what he started, but you should stay away. Far away." I should leave town." "That would be smart?" But even as Elle said it, she saw something change in Sarah's expression. Not fear retreating, but resolution hardening. "No," Sarah said quietly. "No, I don't think I will. If someone needs to testify about what I saw, I'll do it. I came out here to protect wildlife, Mrs. Garrison. That's worth taking a risk for." Elle studied her for a long moment. Saw something she recognized. The stubborn courage of someone who believed in something bigger than themselves. "All right," Elle said, "but stay in town. Don't go back up the mountain, not until this is over." "What are you going to do?" "What I do best," Elle said, standing. "I'm going to hunt." She stopped at the general store on her way out of town. Needed supplies, ammunition, some dried goods to supplement what she had at the cabin. The store was busy. Several townspeople shopping, talking in low voices. The conversation stopped when Elle entered. Everyone turned to look at her. She ignored them and headed to the counter. The clerk, a man named Morrison, gave her a nervous smile. "Mrs. Garrison, what can I get for you?" 2 boxes of 4570, dried beans, coffee, salt. He gathered the supplies without comment, but his hands were shaking slightly. Elle watched him work, her instincts alert now. Everyone in this town was nervous around her. "Why?" She paid and was turning to leave when she heard the whisper. "That's her, the one who lives up there. Hutchins's old place. They say she used to be a lawwoman before. More than a lawwoman. They say she was the ghost." Elle froze. The conversations around her died immediately. Everyone staring at her now, waiting. She turned slowly, scanning the faces. Saw fear, curiosity, suspicion. "Something you want to ask me?" she said to the room at large. No one answered. Elle picked up her supplies and walked out. But the damage was done. The whispers had started. People were remembering. Connecting Eleanor Garrison, the quiet widow, with Eleanor Kincaid, the legendary marshal. That complicated things. She mounted Rebel and headed out of town, her mind working. The pieces were there. She could feel them starting to form a pattern. The land purchases, Bill Hutchins's guilt, the professional hunting operation, her husband's death. It was all connected. She just needed to find the thread that tied it all together. The sun was setting as she rode back up into the mountains, the temperature dropping fast. By the time she reached her cabin, full darkness had fallen and the stars were brilliant overhead. Elle unsaddled Rebel and put him in the small corral, fed him, checked his water. The horse was her only companion up here. She'd learned to take care of him first, herself second. Inside the cabin, she lit the lamps and started a fire, made coffee, and sat at her small table spreading out what she'd learned. The land records, Sarah's drawings, the shell casings from the hunting blind. And tomorrow maybe Bill Hutchins's confession letter from Father Matthias. She was close to something. She could feel it. The question was, how deep did this go, and who was running it? Elle sat there for a long time, staring at the evidence, thinking about John, about his final words, about the 5 years she'd spent running from who she really was. She'd tried to escape the ghost, but maybe the ghost was exactly what this mountain needed. Outside, the wind picked up. The temperature dropped below freezing. Winter was coming to the high country, and so was justice. Elle woke to the sound of voices, distant, barely audible over the wind. But there. She rolled out of her bedroll, instantly rifle in hand. The fire had burned down to embers. Through the cabin window she could see the first gray light of dawn touching the peaks. 4:30 in the morning. Too early for any legitimate activity. Perfect timing for criminals. Elle pulled on her boots and coat, moving silently, grabbed her field glasses and slipped out the back door. Rebel was already alert in his corral ears forward, watching the trail to the east. He'd heard them too. Elle moved through the pre-dawn darkness like smoke. Years of practice made her steps silent even on frozen ground. She climbed the rocky outcrop behind her cabin, the one that gave her a clear view of the entire valley below. The voices were clearer now, coming from the direction of the processing station she'd found yesterday. Elle settled into position on the cold stone and raised her field glasses. 3 wagons, moving slowly along the hidden road, no lanterns. The men driving them seemed to know the route by heart. They moved with the confidence of people who'd done this many times before. The wagons stopped at the processing station. Elle counted 8 men climbing down. They moved with purpose, unpacking equipment, rifles, expensive ones even at this distance. 4 of the men wore fine clothes, city clothes, wool coats and leather boots that cost more than most people made in a year. These weren't guides or hunters. These were clients, wealthy men paying for an experience. The other 4 were clearly professionals. They moved differently. Military bearing. They carried the rifles like extensions of themselves, checking the mechanisms with practiced efficiency. One of them pointed toward the valley where Elle had found the hunting blinds. The clients nodded, eager. Money changed hands. Elle couldn't hear the amounts, but she saw the thickness of the bills. Hundreds of dollars. Maybe thousands. For what? The right to kill animals on land they didn't own. The hunting party split into 2 groups. Each took a guide and headed in different directions, moving toward the prime watering holes Elle had discovered, the places where elk and bear came to drink. Elle followed them with her field glasses, her jaw tight. She watched for the next 6 hours, watched them kill. A mountain lion first, a big tom probably 10 years old. Magnificent animal. The client shot it from the blind, the guide directing his aim. The lion died badly, took 3 shots before it stopped moving. They photographed it extensively, the client posing with his boot on the carcass, grinning like he'd accomplished something. Then a black bear. Then another. 2 elk that Elle recognized from Sarah's descriptions. Part of the herd the naturalist had been studying. Each kill was documented, photographed. The valuable parts were removed quickly. Claws, teeth, antlers. The meat was left to rot. By noon, the hunting party had returned to the processing station. The guides hung the trophies from the wooden frame, skinned them with professional speed, packed the valuable parts into crates. The clients celebrated with cigars and whiskey, expensive bottles, laughing, slapping each other's backs. Elle lowered the field glasses. Her hands were shaking, not from cold, from rage. These men were slaughtering wildlife for sport, for trophies, turning her mountain into a private killing ground for rich men who wanted to pretend they were hunters, and they'd been doing it for months, maybe years, right under the previous owner's nose, or with his permission. As Elle watched, one of the guides pulled out a map and pointed toward the western ridge, toward her cabin. The others looked, nodded. Then one of them pointed directly at her position. Elle's blood went cold. They knew. They knew someone was living up here now, knew she'd been moving around her property. Maybe they'd even seen her tracks from yesterday. The guide folded the map and said something Elle couldn't hear, but she saw the client's expressions change. Concern, worry. One of them gestured dismissively. Whatever the guide had said, the client wasn't worried. Big mistake. The wagons loaded up and rolled out just after 1 in the afternoon. Elle stayed in position until they were gone. Then she climbed down from the rocks and headed back to her cabin. She had a lot to think about, and she needed to get back to town. Father Matthias would have made his decision by now about Bill Hutchkins' letter. Silver Ridge looked the same as yesterday. Same quiet streets, same suspicious glances when Elle rode in. But something felt different. Tenser. Elle tied Rebel outside the church and went inside. Found Father Matthias in the small office behind the altar. He looked up when she entered, his face troubled. "Mrs. Garrison, I thought you might come." "You made your decision." He stood, slowly walked to a locked cabinet and removed a sealed envelope. The paper was yellowed with age. The seal was intact. "Bill Hutchkins gave this to me 3 days before he died, made me promise to keep it safe, to give it to someone who might need it." He held the envelope out. "I believe you're that someone." Elle took it carefully. Did he say what's in it? A confession, names, dates, evidence of crimes he'd witnessed but been too afraid to report. The priest's voice was heavy. "He was a weak man, Mrs. Garrison, but not an evil one. He tried to refuse at first. They threatened his family. His daughter lived in Denver. They told him what would happen to her if he didn't cooperate." "Who threatened him?" "Read the letter. It's all there." Elle broke the seal and unfolded the pages. Bill Hutchkins' handwriting was shaky but legible. She read in silence, the priest watching her. The letter was devastating. It detailed 8 years of illegal hunting operations on Hutchkins' land, how he'd been approached by a man named Clayton Voss, how Voss had offered him $5,000 a year to look the other way while his clients used the property, how Hutchkins had refused at first, how they'd shown him photographs of his daughter, made it clear what would happen if he didn't cooperate. So he'd cooperated, taken the money, watched as they built their infrastructure, as they systematically slaughtered the wildlife on his land. And the letter named names. Clayton Voss, the organizer, Denver businessman with connections to railroad companies and cattle operations. Marcus Reed, deputy U.S. Marshal, the man who'd investigated suspicious activity and found nothing, the man who'd been John Garrison's partner. Elle's hands clenched on the paper. Marcus Reed, the man who'd found John's body, who'd written the report that called it an accident, who'd consoled her at the funeral. He'd been on Voss's payroll the entire time. She looked up at Father Matthias, her voice cold. When did Hutchkins write this? 3 days before his death. He was dying already. Cancer. He wanted to make it right before facing his maker. This letter mentions my husband, John Garrison. The priest nodded sadly. I know. Bill wrote that John had been asking questions, getting too close. Bill tried to warn him off, but your husband wouldn't listen. And Marcus Reed, according to Bill, Reed set up the meeting, told John he had evidence, led him to that ridge where the accident happened. Elle stood abruptly, the rage in her chest threatening to explode. It wasn't an accident. No, Father Matthias said quietly. I don't believe it was. She paced the small office, forcing herself to breathe, to think. Why didn't you come forward with this? Why keep it secret? The seal of confession. Bill told me these things under the sacrament. I couldn't break that trust. But the letter that's different, that's his own testimony, his choice to share it. Elle looked at the pages in her hand. Evidence, real evidence, names, dates, payments, everything she'd need to bring to federal authorities. There's more, Father Matthias said. There's a ledger. Bill kept it hidden in his barn, detailed records of every payment Voss made to him, every transaction. He told me where to find it before he died. You have it. Hidden in the church cellar. I'll give it to you. But Mrs. Garrison, you need to understand something. These men are dangerous. They've killed before. They'll kill again to protect this operation. I know. And you're still going to go after them. I made a promise to my husband. I'm going to keep it. The priest studied her for a long moment. You're not just Eleanor Garrison, the widow, are you? No. Eleanor Kincaid, the ghost. He said it like a prayer. I heard the stories. Everyone did. The marshal who could track anyone, who brought in more outlaws than anyone in the territory. That was a long time ago. Was it? Or did you just stop using the name? Elle didn't answer. Father Matthias went to the cellar door. Come with me. I'll show you where the ledger is. The ledger was everything Bill Hutchkins had promised. Page after page of meticulous records, dates, amounts, names. Clayton Voss appeared on almost every page. $5,000 to Bill Hutchkins annually, $2,000 to Marcus Reed every 6 months. Payments to others too, local officials, county clerks, Deputy Wheeler. Everyone had been bought. Elle sat in the church cellar reading by lamplight, the cold seeping through the stone walls, each page making her angrier. They'd built an empire on corruption, on fear, on the systematic slaughter of protected wildlife, and John had died trying to stop it. She closed the ledger and looked at Father Matthias. I need to send a telegram, to Denver, to the U.S. Marshal's office. You're bringing in federal law. This is bigger than local jurisdiction now. Interstate trafficking, organized crime. They'll have to act. How long will that take? 3 days, maybe 4, long enough for me to gather more evidence, make sure this case is airtight. And if Voss's men come for you before then? Elle's smile was cold. Let them try. She sent the telegram from the Silver Ridge office that afternoon, addressed to Marshal Benjamin Thorne in Denver. She'd worked with him years ago before she'd turned in her badge. If anyone would take this seriously, it would be him. The message was simple. Have evidence, major wildlife trafficking operation. Multiple federal violations. Need support. Eleanor Kincaid. Using her old name would get his attention. Make him understand this wasn't a joke. The telegraph operator stared at her as she paid. Kincaid, I thought your name was Garrison. It is. Kincaid was my maiden name. But the damage was done. The operator would talk. The whole town would know by nightfall. Eleanor Garrison was Eleanor Kincaid. The ghost had returned. Elle walked back to where Rebel waited. The sun was setting, painting the mountains gold and red. Beautiful country. Worth protecting. Worth fighting for. She was mounting up when she noticed the man watching her from across the street. Deputy Wheeler. He stood in the shadow of the saloon, his face pale even in the fading light. Their eyes met. Wheeler flinched and looked away. Elle rode over to him. "Deputy, we should talk." I got nothing to say to you, Mrs. Garrison." "Mrs. Kincaid, actually. Eleanor Kincaid." The color drained from his face completely. The ghost. "Jesus, you're her." "I am. And I know you're on Clayton Voss's payroll. I've seen the ledger." Wheeler started shaking. "I don't know what you're talking about." $500, twice a year. That's what Bill Hutchkins recorded. That's what Voss paid you to look the other way while they ran their operation." I didn't. You took the money. You knew what was happening. And you did nothing. They said they'd kill me. You don't understand these men." "I understand perfectly," Elle said, her voice ice. "You're a coward. You took money to ignore murder." "Yes, Deputy. Murder. Because my husband died investigating this operation, and you helped cover it up. I didn't know about that, I swear. I just didn't ask questions when they told me not to." Elle leaned down from Rebel's saddle, her face close to his. "Here's what's going to happen. In 3 days, federal marshals are coming to Silver Ridge. They're going to shut down Voss's entire operation, and when they do, you're going to testify. You're going to tell them everything you know." "They'll kill me." "Maybe. But if you don't cooperate, I'll make sure you spend the rest of your life in a federal prison. Your choice." Wheeler was crying now. "What do you want from me?" "Information. How many men does Voss have working for him locally?" I don't know. 8, 10. Some are just guides, but there are others. Security, enforcers." "How often do they run hunting trips?" "Twice a month, sometimes more. Rich clients from Denver, Chicago, even New York. They pay $20,000, $30,000 for a guaranteed kill of rare animals." "And Marcus Reed?" Wheeler's face twisted. "Reed's the one who makes it all legal. He's a deputy marshal. He files the reports that say nothing's wrong, tells the federal office that any complaints are just rumors." "Does he come to Silver Ridge?" "Sometimes. Usually stays in Denver. But he's up here now. Arrived yesterday." Elle's pulse quickened. "Where?" "The Grand Hotel, room 12. She straightened in her saddle. "Marcus Reed was here, in town, right now. The man who'd betrayed her husband, who'd set up his death and called it an accident." The rage in Elle's chest flared white-hot. "One more thing," she said to Wheeler. "Does Voss know about me? Does he know I'm asking questions?" Wheeler nodded miserably. "His men reported someone was snooping around the processing station, cutting through the woods. Voss sent word this morning. He's coming to Silver Ridge himself, tomorrow." "To do what?" "To deal with the problem." That's what the message said. Deal with the problem before it gets worse. Elle smiled. A cold, dangerous smile. "Tell him I'll be waiting." She didn't go to the hotel that night. As much as she wanted to confront Marcus Reed, she needed to be smart, needed to think tactically. Bursting into his room with a rifle would feel good, but it wouldn't serve justice. And justice was what John deserved, not revenge, though the line between the two was getting blurry. Elle rode back up to her cabin as darkness fell. The temperature had dropped below freezing. Her breath steamed in the air. Winter was close now. She could smell it in the wind. Inside, she built up the fire and made coffee. Sat at her small table with the ledger and Bill Hutchkins's letter spread out before her. Then she did something she hadn't done in 5 years. She pulled out John's journal. It was a small leather-bound book worn from years of use. John had kept it religiously, recording his thoughts and observations. She'd read parts of it after his death, but never all of it. It had hurt too much. Now she forced herself to start from the beginning. The early entries were mundane, notes about ranch work, weather observations, plans for improving the property, but about 6 months before his death, the tone changed. "Heard rumors today from Bill Hutchkins. Something strange happening on the mountain properties north of here. Wildlife populations declining. No one knows why. 3 weeks later, rode up to investigate, found evidence of illegal hunting, professional operation. Need to look into this more carefully. A month after that, Marcus says he'll help, says he's heard similar reports from other areas. We're going to coordinate an investigation. Elle's hands tightened on the journal. Marcus. John had trusted him, had brought him into the investigation, and Marcus had betrayed him. She kept reading the entries, getting more detailed, more urgent. Found processing station in the high country. This is bigger than I thought. Organized, well-funded. Someone's running a major operation. Marcus identified the owner, Clayton Voss, Denver businessman, railroad connections. This won't be easy to stop. Met with Bill Hutchkins. He's terrified. Won't talk. But I saw the guilt in his eyes. He knows something. The final entries made Elle's chest tight. Marcus says he has evidence, proof that will bring down the whole operation. Meeting him tomorrow at the Ridge. Says we'll finally have what we need. Eleanor worries. Told me to let the federal office handle it, but we're so close. Just one more day. That was the last entry, the day before John died, before Marcus led him to that ridge and killed him, or had someone else do it. Elle closed the journal, her vision blurring with tears. 5 years. 5 years of thinking it was an accident, of grieving a random tragedy. It had been murder. Cold, calculated murder. She wiped her eyes angrily. Crying wouldn't bring John back, wouldn't make this right. But destroying Voss's operation would. Putting Marcus Reed in chains would. Making sure every man involved paid for what they'd done. That would be justice. Elle stood and walked to the window, looked out at the dark mountain. The stars were brilliant overhead, thousands of them in the thin air. John used to stand here with her, looking at those same stars, talking about the future they'd build together. I'm going to finish it, she said to the darkness, just like you asked, just like I promised. The wind answered, whistling through the pines. It sounded almost like approval. She slept restlessly that night. Dreams of John, of the raid in Santa Fe, of the boy she'd killed, all the ghosts that haunted her. She woke before dawn to the sound of horses, multiple horses, moving up the trail toward her cabin. Elle was on her feet instantly, rifle in hand. She moved to the window and peered out into the pre-dawn darkness. 5 riders, coming straight toward her property, not trying to hide, not using the hidden road, coming directly to her front door. Elle recognized the man in front, even at a distance, even in the dim light. Clayton Voss, tall, well-dressed, sitting his horse like he owned the world. He'd come to deal with the problem personally. Elle stepped out onto her porch, rifle resting casually across her arms. Not pointing at anyone, not yet, but ready. The rider stopped 20 yards from her cabin. Voss smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Mrs. Garrison, or should I say, Mrs. Kincaid, the stories about you don't do you justice. You're trespassing. Am I? That's a matter of some debate, actually. You see, I've been using this land for quite some time now, long before you arrived. The deed says it's mine. Deeds can be renegotiated. I'm prepared to offer you $50,000 for this property, cash, today. You can walk away, find another mountain to hide on. Everyone wins. Elle studied him. 50,000 was a fortune, enough money to live comfortably for the rest of her life. No. Voss's smile faded slightly. That's a generous offer, Mrs. Kincaid. I'm not interested in your money. I'm interested in justice. For my husband. For this mountain. For every animal your clients have slaughtered. Your husband. Voss's expression changed. Recognition. John Garrison, of course. I didn't make the connection until yesterday. My apologies for your loss. Apologies. Elle's voice was cold. My husband died investigating your operation, and you have the gall to offer me condolences. Your husband died in an unfortunate accident. That's what the official report says. The report written by Marcus Reed, your man. Voss's eyes narrowed. You've been busy, asking questions, making accusations. That's dangerous, Mrs. Kincaid, for everyone involved. Is that a threat? It's a fact. This operation represents significant investment. Powerful people are involved. People who don't appreciate interference. Elle shifted the rifle slightly, still not pointing it, but the message was clear. Here's another fact, Mr. Voss. In 3 days, federal marshals will arrive in Silver Ridge. They have evidence of your crimes, names, dates, financial records. Your operation is finished. For the first time, Voss looked uncertain. You're bluffing. Bill Hutchkins kept a ledger. Every payment you made. Every name on your payroll. Father Matthias gave it to me yesterday. It's already on its way to Denver. That was a lie. The ledger was still hidden in her cabin. But Voss didn't need to know that. His face hardened. Then we have nothing more to discuss. No, we don't. Voss turned his horse. You're making a mistake, Mrs. Kincaid. A fatal one. This mountain isn't safe for a woman alone. Elle smiled, cold and hard. It will be, when you're gone. The 5 riders left, but Elle watched them go with ice in her veins. That hadn't been a negotiation. That had been a warning. Voss would be back, and next time he wouldn't be offering money. Next time he'd be bringing guns. Elle went back inside and began preparing, not with fear, not with hesitation, with the cold tactical precision of someone who'd fought battles before, and always won. The ghost was awake now, and she was hunting. Elle spent the morning setting traps, not the kind designed to kill, the kind designed to warn. She strung new gut line across every approach to her cabin, attached tin cans filled with pebbles this time instead of bells. Louder, harder to cut silently. She piled loose stones on the ridge above the main trail. A few well-placed kicks would send them tumbling down, not enough to kill a man, but enough to create chaos, to break a charge. She checked her ammunition, counted rounds, cleaned her rifle and her revolver. The sharps for distance, the Colt for close work. All the old skills coming back, muscle memory from years of hunting men instead of animals. By noon she was as ready as she could be. But she knew preparation wasn't enough. She needed more information, needed to understand exactly what she was facing. She needed to talk to Marcus Reed. Elle saddled Rebel and rode back down to Silver Ridge. The day was cold and clear, perfect visibility. She could see for miles across the valley. No one following her, not yet, but they would be. Soon. The town was quiet when she arrived. Midday lull, most people inside escaping the cold. Elle tied Rebel outside the Grand Hotel and went in. The lobby was empty except for the clerk behind the desk, a young man maybe 25. He looked up nervously when Elle entered. "Help you, ma'am. Marcus Reed, room 12. Is he in?" I'm not supposed to give out information about guests." Elle pulled out her old marshal's badge. She'd kept it all these years hidden in a drawer. Never thought she'd use it again. But here she was. "Deputy U.S. Marshal Eleanor Kincaid. I need to speak with Mr. Reed on official business." The clerk's eyes went wide. "Marshal Kincaid, the ghost. Is he in his room?" Yes, ma'am. Upstairs, second door on the left." Elle climbed the stairs slowly. Her hand rested on the Colt at her hip, not expecting trouble, not really, but ready for it anyway. She knocked on room 12. Footsteps inside. Then the door opened. Marcus Reed stood there, older than she remembered, gray in his hair now, lines around his eyes, but the same face, the same man who'd stood at John's funeral and told her how sorry he was, the same man who'd murdered him. His face went pale when he saw her. "Eleanor." "Marcus, I heard you were in town, heard you were asking questions." He tried to smile. "It's good to see you." "Is it?" Something in her voice made him step back. "Why don't you come in? We can talk." Elle entered the room. Clean, neat, a bottle of whiskey on the table, papers spread out, working papers maybe, or evidence of his crimes. She turned to face him. Bill Hutchkins kept a ledger. Marcus's face went completely white. "Every payment Clayton Voss made, including the ones to you, $2,000 every 6 months, for 8 years. Elle's voice was ice. "That's what John's life was worth to you, $16,000. Eleanor, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You were John's partner. He trusted you, and you set him up. led him to that ridge and had him killed. It wasn't like that. Then tell me what it was like. Elle's hand moved closer to her Colt. Tell me how my husband died. Marcus backed away, his hands up, placating, desperate. I didn't have a choice. They had my daughter, Isabella. She lives in Denver. Voss's men showed me photographs, told me what they'd do to her if I didn't cooperate. So you cooperated. You took the money. You helped them run their operation. I looked the other way, that's all. I filed reports that said nothing was wrong. I didn't hurt anyone. You hurt John. Marcus's face crumpled. I tried to warn him. I told him to drop the investigation, to let it go, but he wouldn't listen. He kept pushing, kept digging. So you killed him. No, I swear to God, Eleanor, I didn't kill him. I told Voss that John was getting too close, that he was about to expose everything. Marcus was crying now, tears streaming down his face. I didn't know they'd kill him. I thought they'd just scare him, threaten him like they threatened me. But they didn't scare him. They killed him, and you helped them cover it up. I wrote the report, called it an accident. I had to, for Isabella's sake. Elle stared at him. This broken, pathetic man, once a good lawman, John's friend, now reduced to this. Where's your daughter now? Safe, in Chicago. I sent her away 3 years ago. Told her never to come back to Denver. She doesn't know why. So you've been free for 3 years, and you kept taking Voss's money anyway. Marcus looked away. I didn't know how to stop, how to get out, and I was afraid they'd come after me if I tried to leave. Elle felt something cold settle in her chest. Not rage anymore. Something colder, harder. Contempt. You're a coward, Marcus. John died because you were too weak to stand up to them, to protect what was right. I know. His voice was barely a whisper. I've known it every day for 5 years. I can't sleep. Can't look at myself in a mirror. I'm dying inside Eleanor. Good. She turned toward the door. Wait. Marcus grabbed her arm. What are you going to do? Elle looked at his hand on her arm. He released it immediately. I'm going to finish what John started. I'm going to destroy Voss's operation, and you're going to help me. I can't. You can, and you will. Because if you don't, I'll make sure everyone knows what you did. Your daughter will know. The federal marshals will know. You'll spend the rest of your life in prison, Marcus. Is that what you want? He stood there shaking, broken. What do you need from me? Information. How many men does Voss have? What kind of firepower? 12 men on payroll. 8 are just guides and laborers. But 4 are enforcers, ex-soldiers. Silas Drummond leads them. He's the dangerous one. Military trained, tactical experience. Are they in Silver Ridge? They arrived this morning, after Voss met with you. He's planning something. I don't know what. I do. He's planning to eliminate me, before the federal marshals arrive. Marcus nodded miserably. That's what he does. Remove problems. Permanently. Elle studied him for a long moment. Where will you be when this happens? What? When Voss's men come for me. Where will you be, Marcus? Still hiding, still taking his money? Or will you finally do the right thing? He didn't answer. Elle left him there, standing in his hotel room, a ghost of the man he used to be. She'd gotten what she needed. Information. Confirmation. Now she just had to survive what came next. She found Sarah Whitmore at the boarding house packing her belongings into a travel trunk. Mrs. Garrison? Sarah looked up surprised. I was just leaving, heading back east on tomorrow's stage. I thought you said you weren't going to run. Sarah's face flushed. I thought about what you said, about it being dangerous. I'm not a fighter, Mrs. Garrison. I'm a naturalist. I study animals. I don't know how to do what you do. Elle sat down across from her. What I do isn't special. It's just being willing to stand up when others won't. That's easy for you to say. You're the ghost. You're a legend. I'm nobody. John was nobody too. Just a rancher who saw something wrong and decided to fix it. And it got him killed. Elle leaned forward. But his death mattered, Sarah. Because I'm here now. Finishing what he started. Every person who stands up matters. even if they're scared. I am scared. So am I. Sarah blinked. You're scared. Terrified. Clayton Voss has a dozen men. Professional killers. They're coming for me tonight or tomorrow, and there's a good chance I won't survive. Elle held her gaze. But I'm doing it anyway, because some things are worth dying for. The animals. The animals. The mountain. The truth. Justice for John. Elle stood. You don't have to stay. You don't have to fight. But if you leave now, you'll always wonder if you could have made a difference. She walked to the door, then stopped. There's a stage to Denver tomorrow afternoon. If you want to help, really help, you could ride to the federal marshal's office. Tell them what you saw. Give them your drawings. Your testimony could make the difference in bringing Voss down. That's a 2-day ride. Yes, and it's dangerous. Voss might have men watching the roads, but it's also the most important thing you could do right now. Sarah stood slowly. You want me to go to Denver, to bring back the marshals? I want you to do what you think is right, whatever that is. Elle left her there thinking. Outside, the afternoon sun was already sinking toward the mountains. The days were short now, winter close. She had maybe 4 hours of daylight left, then darkness. And in the darkness, Voss's men would come. Elle rode Rebel up into the high country, but not toward her cabin. Instead, she headed east toward a place she hadn't visited in years, a place that held memories, the ridge where John had died. She found the spot easily. 5 years hadn't changed it. The same rocks, the same view down into the valley below. Beautiful country, peaceful, the worst place in the world. Elle dismounted and stood at the edge, looking at the spot where she'd found John's body, where Marcus Reed had discovered him. Called it an accident. The rage threatened to overwhelm her again, but she pushed it down, converted it into something colder, more useful. Focus. She examined the ground carefully. 5 years of weather had erased most of the evidence, but not all of it. The rocks here were wrong, out of place, arranged too neatly for a natural fall. Someone had moved them, staged the scene to look like an accident. Elle knelt, running her hands over the stone, remembering. And then she heard it, a voice from the past. Not John's voice, someone else's. Ground never lies. Men lie. Ground tells truth. 3 ravens. The Kiowa scout who'd taught her to track when she was just starting out as a deputy marshal. An old man even then, weathered by decades on the plains. He'd taken her into the backcountry and shown her how to read sign, how to see what others missed, how to hunt. 20 years earlier, the plains of eastern Colorado, young Elle Kincaid, barely 20 years old, following the old scout through tall grass. Her first week as a deputy marshal. Eager, overconfident. 3 ravens stopped suddenly, pointed at the ground. What you see? Elle looked, saw nothing but grass. I don't see anything. That why you not good tracker yet? He knelt, parted the grass with his gnarled fingers. Look closer. Ground always tell story. You just need learn language. He showed her the faint depression in the soil, where someone had stepped, hours ago, maybe a day. Man came through here, running, heavy pack, moving east. How can you tell all that? Depth of print, weight distribution, direction of displaced grass. Ground never lie. He stood, his dark eyes serious. Men lie. Say one thing, do another, but ground only truth. He'd taught her to read terrain like a book, to see the invisible, to understand what happened in a place just by looking, to become the ghost. Elle stood on the ridge, her eyes closed, remembering those lessons, applying them now. The rocks weren't just moved, they were placed, deliberately, to hide something. She began removing them carefully, one by one, working methodically. And then she found it. A hat. John's hat. Wedged between 2 large stones. Hidden, but not destroyed, not thrown away. Why, Elle pulled it out carefully. The hat was weathered but intact, and inside the band she found something that made her heart stop. A small piece of paper, folded tight, tucked into the leather. She unfolded it with shaking hands. John's handwriting. If you're reading this, I'm probably dead. Voss knows I'm close. Marcus is acting strange. I think he's compromised. Meeting him today but taking precautions. Evidence is in the old mine shaft, east face of the mountain, 100 yards below the split pine. Everything you need to bring them down. Finish this, Elle. Promise me." Elle read it 3 times, her vision blurring with tears. He'd known. John had known he was walking into danger, had left this message in case the worst happened, and she'd never found it, never looked. For 5 years the evidence had been sitting in an abandoned mine shaft, waiting. Elle carefully folded the note and put it in her pocket. Then she mounted Rebel and headed east, toward the split pine, toward the truth John had died protecting. The mine shaft was exactly where John's note said it would be, an old claim from the silver boom days, long abandoned, dangerous. The entrance was partially collapsed, barely wide enough to squeeze through. Elle lit a lantern and crawled inside. The shaft went back about 30 feet before opening into a small chamber, and there, in a rusted metal box, she found it. Documents, photographs, financial records, everything John had gathered in his investigation, proof of Voss's operation, names of clients, photographs of illegal kills, shipping manifests showing where the animal parts went, Asian markets, European collectors, wealthy buyers willing to pay fortunes for rare trophies, and more names, government officials on Voss's payroll, railroad executives, even a state senator. This wasn't just a wildlife crime, this was corruption reaching the highest levels. John had been killed for this, because this evidence would destroy dozens of powerful men. Elle packed everything carefully into a canvas bag, sealed it. This was going to Denver, to the federal marshals, even if she didn't survive what was coming. She crawled back out of the mine shaft just as the sun touched the western peaks. Maybe an hour of daylight left. Time to go home. Time to prepare. Time to become the ghost. One final time. She returned to her cabin as dusk fell. The temperature was dropping fast, going to be a cold night, clear and bright, good conditions for what was coming. Elle unsaddled Rebel and put him in the corral, fed him extra grain. If things went badly tonight, she wanted him to have the strength to run, to get away. Inside the cabin, she laid out everything methodically. The Sharps rifle, cleaned and loaded, the Colt revolver, 6 rounds, extra ammunition for both, her knife, sharp and ready, a canteen of water, dried meat in her pockets, everything she'd need for a long night. Then she packed John's evidence into a waterproof satchel, wrote a note to Marshal Thorne in Denver, explained everything, where to find the ledger, where to find the processing station, all of it. She sealed the satchel and set it by the door. If Sarah Whitmore had decided to ride to Denver, she could take it with her. If not, Elle would have to survive long enough to deliver it herself. She ate a cold meal as darkness fell. No fire, no light. Just sitting in the dark cabin preparing mentally for what was coming. Voss would send his men tonight. She was certain of it. He couldn't risk waiting for the federal marshals to arrive, couldn't give her time to get more help. He had to eliminate the problem, now. And Silas Drummond, the ex-soldier, would lead them. 12 men, maybe more, all armed, all trained, against one woman in her late 30s who hadn't fought a real battle in 5 years. The odds were bad. But Elle had fought worse. She sat in the darkness thinking about John, about 3 ravens, about all the people she'd lost over the years, and she made her peace with what might happen tonight. If she died, at least she'd die fighting, die protecting something that mattered, die keeping her promise. There were worse ways to go. The moon rose just after 9 o'clock, full and bright, flooding the valley with silver light. Elle positioned herself on the ridge behind her cabin, the same spot she'd used to watch the hunting party. Perfect vantage point. She could see every approach. And at 2 in the morning she heard them. Horses. Trying to be quiet but failing, the sound carrying in the thin mountain air. Rebel stamped in his corral. Warning. Elle raised her field glasses and counted. 4 wagons, 12 men, just like Marcus had said. Silas Drummond in the lead. She recognized him from his bearing. Military posture, confident movement. They stopped 300 yards from her cabin, positioned to block all escape routes. Tactical formation, professional work. Elle watched them deploy, studied their movements, their weapons, their strategy. They were good, well-trained, disciplined, but they didn't know this mountain like she did, didn't know the terrain, the rocks, the shadows, Didn't know they were hunting the ghost. Elle settled into position behind a large boulder, rested the Sharp's rifle on the stone, adjusted the sight for distance and elevation. 300 yards. Long shot. But not impossible. She selected her first target. Not a man, the lead wagon's rear axle. If she could disable it, she'd block their retreat, force them to fight on foot, on her terms, in terrain she controlled. Elle took a slow breath, let it out halfway, squeezed the trigger. The Sharps roared, the sound echoing across the valley like thunder. The wagon's rear axle exploded in a shower of splinters. The wagon dropped tilting sideways. Useless. Men scattered diving for cover, shouting, confused. Elle was already moving, shifting position. 30 yards to the left, different angle. She fired again, hit the second wagon's front wheel. The rim shattered. The wagon lurched. More chaos below. Men firing blindly into the darkness, trying to find her. But she was already gone. Moving again, using the terrain, the rocks, the shadows, becoming what she'd always been, a ghost. Drummond was shouting orders, trying to organize his men, establish a perimeter. But they were rattled, confused, one shooter, one woman, and she was taking them apart. Elle circled around to the north, found a new position, waited. A man broke cover, running toward the cabin, thinking he could flank her. Elle fired. The round kicked up dirt 2 feet in front of him. A warning shot. Not trying to kill. Not yet. The man dove back into cover. Elle smiled grimly. Let them understand. She could hit them anytime she wanted, could kill them all if she chose, but she was showing restraint, giving them a choice, leave or die. Drummond understood. She saw him pointing at her last muzzle flash, coordinating his men, trying to triangulate her position. Smart, but not smart enough. Elle moved again, always moving, never staying in one place. The mountain was her ally, the darkness, the rocks. She'd fought battles like this before, against men who thought numbers meant victory. They always learned the same lesson. On the right terrain with the right skills, one person could be an army. And Eleanor Kincaid had always been exceptional. The standoff lasted 2 hours. Elle fired periodically, keeping them pinned, destroying equipment, creating chaos, never killing, not yet. That wasn't the mission. The mission was to show them what they were facing, to make them understand. This mountain belonged to her, and they were trespassing. Finally, around 4 in the morning, Drummond made his move. He ordered a retreat, loaded his men into the 2 functional wagons, left the disabled ones behind. Elle watched them go. Could have picked off men as they retreated. Easy shots. But she let them leave, sent them back to Clayton Voss with a message. The widow wasn't a problem to be eliminated. She was a hunter. And they were prey. As the wagons disappeared down the trail, Elle climbed down from the ridge, exhausted, shaking from adrenaline and cold, but alive and victorious. She walked to her cabin just as dawn broke over the mountains, pink and gold light flooding the valley. And she saw them. Riders, coming from the south, moving fast. Elle raised her rifle, tired but ready. Then she recognized the lead rider, Sarah Whitmore, and behind her 4 men in federal uniforms. Marshal Benjamin Thorne had arrived. Marshal Benjamin Thorne looked older than Elle remembered, more gray in his hair, deeper lines around his eyes, but the same steady gaze, the same quiet authority that had made him one of the best lawmen in the territory. He dismounted slowly, studying her, taking in the rifle in her hands, the exhaustion on her face. The disabled wagons scattered across the clearing. "Eleanor Kincaid," he said finally. 5 years. I thought you were dead." "I tried to be. Didn't take." He gestured at the scene around them. "Miss Whitmore told me you had trouble up here." "Some." A slight smile touched his weathered face. "Looks like the trouble came off worse than you did." Sarah dismounted, her face flushed from the hard ride. "I went to Denver, like you said. Brought the evidence. Marshal Thorne was already investigating Clayton Voss. Your telegram got his attention." Thorne nodded. "Been tracking Voss for 2 years. Wildlife trafficking, money laundering, corruption. But we could never find his base of operations, never get solid evidence." He looked at Elle. Until now. I have everything you need, Elle said. Bill Hutchkins's ledger, John's evidence from the mine shaft, photographs, financial records, names of everyone on Voss's payroll, including Marcus Reed. Elle's jaw tightened, especially Marcus Reed. Thorne's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Disappointment, maybe. Anger. Reed's been filing reports for years, telling us this area was clean, no suspicious activity. He was being paid to lie, $2,000 every 6 months. Where is he now? Silver Ridge, Grand Hotel, room 12. Elle met his gaze. He's a coward and a traitor, but he didn't pull the trigger on John. He just set it up. That's still murder under federal law. I know. Thorne turned to his men. 3 deputy marshals, all young and eager. Thompson, ride to Silver Ridge. Bring in Marcus Reed, quietly. No fuss. Lock him in the local jail until we're ready to transport him to Denver. Yes, sir. As Thompson rode off, Thorne looked back at Elle. How many men does Voss have in the area? 12 on payroll, 4 are enforcers, ex-military, the rest are guides and laborers. Elle gestured at the disabled wagons. I sent them running a few hours ago. They'll report back to Voss that I'm not as easy to kill as he thought. Where's Voss now? Silver Ridge, last I heard, but he might have fled when his men failed. He's smart, knows when to cut his losses. Thorne shook his head. He won't run. Not yet. Too much invested here. Too much money at stake. He pulled out a map and spread it on the ground. Show me everything. The processing station, the hidden roads, all of it. Elle knelt beside him, pointed out locations, explained the operation, how it worked, where the clients came from, how the animal parts were shipped out. Sarah added her observations, the hunting patterns, the species being targeted, the ecological damage. By the time they finished, the sun was fully up, cold and bright, another clear day. Thorne rolled up the map. All right, here's how we do this. Coordinated strike. We hit the processing station and arrest everyone on site. Simultaneously, the Denver office raids Voss's headquarters, seizes his records, his assets. When? Elle asked. Tomorrow morning. I need time to position my men. Get word to Denver. Make sure everything happens at once. He looked at her. Can you hold out another day? I've held out for 5 years. One more day won't kill me. Good, because I need you to guide us. Show us exactly where everything is. Nobody knows this mountain like you do. Elle nodded. I'll do it, on one condition. What's that? I'm there when you arrest Voss. I want to look him in the eye when you put him in chains. Thorne studied her for a long moment. This about justice or revenge? Does it matter? It does to me. I need to know you won't shoot him the first chance you get. Elle met his gaze. Honest. I won't lie to you, Ben. Part of me wants him dead. Wants to put a bullet in him myself for what he did to John. But I made a promise. Finish what John started. That means seeing Voss in prison, watching his empire burn down. Death's too easy for him. That's the Eleanor Kincaid I remember, the one who believed in law. He extended his hand. Deal. You guide us in. You can be there for the arrest. They shook. Sarah cleared her throat. What about me? What can I do? Thorne turned to her. You've done more than enough, Miss Whitmore. You rode 2 days straight to bring us here. That took courage. I want to help more. I want to testify, make sure these men pay for what they've done to the wildlife. You'll get your chance. Federal grand jury in Denver. Your testimony will be crucial. He smiled. For now, get some rest. You've earned it. They spent the day preparing. Thorne's deputies scouted the terrain around the processing station, planned approach routes, identified escape paths that needed to be blocked. Elle showed them everything, the hidden roads, the blind spots, the places where Voss's men might make a stand. By evening they had a solid plan, and word came from Denver. The raid there was set. 6 federal agents ready to hit Voss's office at dawn. Arrest warrants signed, asset seizure orders approved. Everything was in motion. Elle made coffee for everyone as night fell. They gathered in her small cabin going over the plan one more time, making sure everyone knew their role. Sarah sat quietly in the corner sketching the landscape by lamplight, recording everything for her testimony. Thorne pulled Elle aside as the others talked. "You holding up all right?" "I'm tired," Elle admitted. "Haven't slept much in 3 days. After tomorrow you can sleep. This'll be over." "Will it?" Elle looked out the window at the dark mountain. "Voss goes to prison. His men scatter. But the damage is done. Years of slaughter. Wildlife populations decimated. Some species might never recover. That's why we have people like Miss Whitmore, scientists, conservationists. They'll help the mountain heal." Thorne's voice was gentle. "You did what you could, Eleanor. You stopped it. That's all any of us can do. John did more. He died for it. And you finished what he started, honored his sacrifice. That matters." Elle was quiet for a moment. Then, "Ben, what happens to me after this? Everyone's going to know Eleanor Kincaid is back. The ghost. The legend. I can't hide anymore. Do you want to hide?" "I wanted peace. Isolation. A quiet life. And instead you got a war." Thorne smiled slightly. "But you won. And now you get to decide what comes next. The badge is yours if you want it back. Federal marshals could use someone with your skills." Elle shook her head. "No. I'm done hunting men. Done with violence. This was personal. This was for John. But after tomorrow, I'm finished." "What will you do?" She looked out at the mountain again. "Protect this place. Make sure what John died for wasn't in vain. Turn this land into something good. A sanctuary, a place where wildlife can live without fear. That's a fine legacy. It's the only one that matters now." They moved out at 4 in the morning, 12 men total. Thorne's deputies plus some local volunteers he'd deputized, ranchers and townsmen who'd been outraged when they learned what Voss had been doing. Good men, angry men, ready to see justice done. Elle rode at the front with Thorne guiding them through the darkness, moving quietly, no lanterns, just starlight and the faint glow of the coming dawn. They reached the processing station just as the sky began to lighten, positioned themselves around it, surrounded the area completely, and waited. At 6 o'clock the wagons arrived, right on schedule. Voss's hunting party, 8 men, 4 clients in fine clothes, 4 guides with rifles. They had no idea what was waiting. Thorne waited until they'd all dismounted, until they were gathered around the processing frame, relaxed, confident. Then he stood up and called out, "United States Marshal, you're all under arrest. Put down your weapons." The reaction was instant. Chaos. Men scrambling for guns, shouting, confusion. But Thorne's deputies were already moving. Professional. Coordinated. They'd done this before. Within minutes it was over. The clients surrendered immediately. Rich men who'd never faced real danger. They went pale when they saw the federal badges. Understood what this meant. The guides tried to resist. One reached for his rifle. A deputy kicked it away, put him face down in the dirt, cuffed him. Another ran, made it 20 yards before Elle stepped out of the trees. Rifle leveled, cold and steady. "Don't." He froze, looked at her, recognized something in her eyes that made him raise his hands. "Smart," Elle said. Within 15 minutes all 8 men were in custody, cuffed, sitting on the ground, surrounded by armed marshals. But Clayton Voss wasn't among them. Thorne walked over to the nearest guide, Silas Drummond, the ex-soldier who'd led the attack on Elle's cabin. "Where's Voss?" Drummond stared straight ahead, silent. Thorne crouched down. "You're looking at 20 years in a federal prison, Mr. Drummond. Conspiracy, wildlife trafficking, attempted murder. That's if you cooperate. If you don't, I'll make sure you never see daylight again." Drummond's jaw worked. "Then, he's in Silver Ridge, Grand Hotel, waiting for word that the woman was dead." He's about to be disappointed. Thorne stood and signaled to his deputies. "Secure the prisoners here. Transport them to the Silver Ridge jail. I'm going after Voss." Elle stepped forward. "I'm going with you." "Eleanor, you promised. I'm there when you arrest him." Thorne looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, but you follow my lead. This is a legal arrest. By the book. Understood? Understood. They rode hard for Silver Ridge. Arrived just after 8 in the morning. The town was waking up. People in the streets, going about their business. They all stopped and stared when the federal marshals rode in. Thorne and Elle dismounted outside the Grand Hotel. 2 deputies went around to cover the back entrance. The others waited in the street. They went inside. The same nervous clerk was at the desk. He paled when he saw them. "Clayton Voss," Thorne said. "What room?" He checked out, sir, an hour ago." Elle's heart sank. "Where did he go?" "The stage depot. He's leaving on the morning coach to Denver." They ran. The stage depot was 2 blocks away. Elle and Thorne sprinted through the streets, people scrambling out of their way. They reached the depot just as the coach was pulling out. "Stop!" Thorne shouted. "Federal Marshal!" The driver pulled the horses to a halt. The coach door opened, and Clayton Voss stepped out. He looked at Elle and Thorne, his face calm, composed, like he'd been expecting this. "Marshal Thorne, Mrs. Kincaid, this is quite the reception." "Clayton Voss, you're under arrest." Thorne had his hand on his revolver. "Wildlife trafficking, racketeering, murder, corruption of federal officials, the list goes on." "Murder. That's a serious accusation." "John Garrison," Elle said, her voice ice. "My husband. You had him killed 5 years ago." "I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about." "Bill Hutchins's ledger says otherwise. John's evidence from the mine shaft says otherwise. Your own men will testify against you in exchange for reduced sentences." Voss's composure cracked slightly. "Testimony from criminals, forgeries. You have nothing that will stand up in court." "We have everything," Thorne said. "And right now in Denver, federal agents are raiding your office, seizing your records, arresting your associates. Your empire is finished, Voss." For the first time, real fear showed in Voss's eyes. "You can't. I have lawyers, connections. You can't touch me." "Watch me." Thorne pulled out handcuffs. "Turn around, hands behind your back." Voss looked at Elle. "You should have taken the money, $50,000. You could have walked away." Elle stepped closer, close enough that only he could hear. "My husband was worth more than your entire fortune. And this mountain is worth more than all the blood money you've made killing what lives here. You're going to prison, Voss. You're going to spend the rest of your life in a cage. And I'm going to make sure this land becomes everything John wanted it to be. A sanctuary, protected, forever." Voss's face twisted with rage. He lunged at her. Elle didn't flinch, didn't move, just watched as Thorne grabbed Voss and slammed him against the coach, cuffed him roughly. "Add assaulting a federal officer to the charges," Thorne said. Voss was shouting now, threatening, demanding his lawyer, his rights, but it was over, and he knew it. They led him away. Through the streets of Silver Ridge, everyone watching, the whole town seeing Clayton Voss in chains, the man who'd seemed so powerful, so untouchable, reduced to just another criminal, just another prisoner. The trials took 6 months. Elle testified before the federal grand jury in Denver, told them everything, about John's investigation, about Bill Hutchins's confession, about the evidence in the mine shaft. Sarah testified, too, about the systematic slaughter she'd witnessed, the ecological damage, the rare species being driven to extinction. Marcus Reed testified against Voss, gave detailed accounts of the operation, how it worked, who was involved, what they'd done. In exchange, his sentence was reduced. 8 years instead of 20. He'd serve his time, pay for his betrayal, but he'd live with what he'd done for the rest of his life. And Elle thought that might be worse than any prison. The clients were sentenced to 5 to 10 years each, their reputations destroyed, their careers ruined. Silas Drummond and the other enforcers got 15 years. Conspiracy, attempted murder, wildlife trafficking, and Clayton Voss got 25 years in federal prison. No parole, no early release. He'd die behind bars. Justice finally for John, for the mountain, for everything that had been lost. Elle stood on the ridge where John had died, the same ridge where she'd found his hat, his final message. It was late spring now. The snow had melted. Wildflowers bloomed across the valley. Elk grazed peacefully below. Bears moved through the forest. Mountain lions hunted in the high country. Life returning. Healing. She'd spent the winter working with the federal government. establishing her land as a protected sanctuary. 2,000 acres set aside permanently. No hunting, no development, no human interference except for scientific research. Sarah had stayed, set up a permanent research station, studying the wildlife recovery, documenting everything. They'd become friends, not close friends. Elle still valued her solitude, but companions, partners in protecting this place. Elle knelt and placed something on the rocks. John's marshal badge, the one she'd found in the evidence box, the one he'd carried for 20 years. She'd had it mounted on a small stone monument, simple, elegant. The inscription read, "John Garrison. He protected what mattered." Elle ran her fingers over the engraved letters, feeling the weight of 5 years, the grief, the rage, the justice finally served. "It's done," she said to the wind, to John's memory. "Everything you fought for, everything you died protecting. It's safe now, forever." The wind whispered through the pines, almost like an answer, almost like approval. Elle stood slowly. Her knees ached. She was 39 now, getting older, feeling it more each day. But she was at peace. Finally. The ghost could rest now. Eleanor Kincaid could rest. She was just Elle Garrison, widow, guardian of the mountain, protector of what John had loved. That was enough. That was everything. She walked back down to her cabin as the sun set. The new cabin, smaller than the first, simpler. The old one had burned during the standoff with Drummond's men. A lantern knocked over in the chaos. Elle had barely gotten out in time. She'd rebuilt. Just one room now. Stone fireplace, simple bunks, everything she needed, nothing she didn't. Rebel waited in the corral, old now, gray in his muzzle, but still strong, still her companion. Elle fed him, checked his water, the ritual she'd done every evening for years. Sarah's research tent showed smoke. The younger woman was making dinner. She'd invited Elle to join her, but Elle had declined. Wanted to be alone tonight. Needed to be alone. Inside the cabin, Elle lit the lamp and made coffee, sat at her small table, pulled out John's journal. She'd read it so many times now. Every page memorized. Every word burned into her memory, but she read it again anyway, finding comfort in his handwriting, his thoughts, his voice preserved on paper, the final entry, the one written the day before he died. "Meeting Marcus tomorrow at the ridge. Says he has evidence that will bring down the whole operation. I'm nervous. Something feels wrong, but we're so close. Just one more day. If something happens, Elle, I know you'll finish this. You're stronger than you think, braver than you know. You always finish what you start. I love you, always have, always will. Even if I'm not there to say it. Finish this for me. Promise. J." Elle closed the journal, wiped her eyes. 5 years and it still hurt, still ached like a fresh wound. But different now. Not raw agony, something quieter, sadder, but bearable. Grief she could live with. She stood and walked to the window, looked out at the mountain. Her mountain now, John's mountain, their mountain, protected, forever. Some mountains hide secrets, she thought. Some mountains keep promises. This one did both, and she would guard it. For as long as she lived, for as long as she had strength. It was her purpose now, her reason, her peace. Summer came. The elk herd grew. Sarah counted 23 individuals now, healthy, thriving. Black bears were seen regularly. Mountain lions, too. The predators returning, the ecosystem balancing. Wildflowers covered the valley in waves of color. Purple, yellow, white, red, beautiful, pristine, untouched. Elle spent her days patrolling, walking the boundaries, checking for poachers, for trespassers, for anyone who might threaten what they'd built. But the mountain was quiet. The word had spread. This land was protected. Federal sanctuary. Touch it and face the full weight of the law. And the ghost. People still whispered about her in the towns below. Eleanor Kincaid, the legendary marshal who'd come out of retirement to destroy a criminal empire. The woman who'd fought 12 armed men alone. And won. Let them whisper, Elle thought. Let them tell stories. As long as they left the mountain alone. On a warm evening in July, Elle sat on her porch, watching the sunset paint the peaks gold and orange. Footsteps approached, Sarah carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might want company." Elle smiled slightly. "You're learning." Sarah sat on the porch steps, handed Elle a cup. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, just watching the light fade. "I got a letter from the university," Sarah said finally. "They want me to write a book about the sanctuary, about the wildlife recovery, about what happened here. Will you?" "I think so, but I want to tell your story too, yours and John's, what you both sacrificed to protect this place." Elle was quiet for a moment. "I'm not a hero, Sarah. I just did what needed doing." "That's what heroes always say." "Then tell the truth. All of it. The good and the bad. Don't make me into something I'm not." Sarah nodded. "I'll tell it true. I promise." They sat in silence again, the stars beginning to emerge overhead, brilliant in the thin mountain air. "Do you miss it?" Sarah asked. "Being a marshal, the work, the purpose?" "I have purpose," Elle said. "Right here, this mountain, this sanctuary, making sure John's sacrifice meant something." "But do you miss the hunting, the chase?" Elle thought about it, honest with herself. Sometimes. There was a clarity to it, a simplicity. Find the outlaw, bring them in. Right and wrong was easy. And now everything's complicated, but better, more real. Elle looked at the younger woman. "I spent 20 years hunting men, bringing justice, but I never saved anything, never built anything, never protected anything that would outlast me. And now you are." "Now I am," Sarah smiled. "That's worth writing about." Fall came. The aspens turned gold. The air grew cold and crisp. Winter approaching again. Elle prepared, stocked supplies, repaired the cabin, made sure Rebel had enough grain to last until spring. Sarah would leave before the heavy snows, head back east to write her book, to give lectures, to spread the word about what they'd accomplished here. But she'd be back in the spring, to continue her research, to document the ongoing recovery. And Elle would be here, waiting, watching over the mountain, through winter, through spring, through summer and fall, year after year, for as long as she had strength. On the last day before Sarah left, they hiked up to John's monument together. Elle placed fresh wildflowers on the stone, ones she'd pressed and dried, purple columbine, John's favorite. "I never met him," Sarah said quietly, "but I wish I had. He must have been extraordinary." "He was ordinary," Elle said. "Just a rancher who saw something wrong and tried to fix it. But I guess that's extraordinary in its own way, caring enough to act, even when it's dangerous, even when it costs you everything." "Like you." "No, I had skills, training, experience. John was just a good man who believed in doing the right thing." Elle smiled sadly. "That took more courage than anything I ever did." Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then, "You know what I think? I think he'd be proud of you, of what you've done, what you've built." "I hope so. I know so." They stood there for a while, 2 women on a mountain, honoring a man who'd died protecting it. And when they walked back down, the sun was setting, the sky ablaze with color. Beautiful country, worth dying for, worth living for. Winter came hard that year, heavy snows, bitter cold. Elle was isolated for weeks at a time, just her and Rebel, and the mountain. She didn't mind. The solitude was what she'd wanted all along, what she'd been seeking when she bought this land. Now she had it, but different than she'd imagined. Not running from her past, not hiding from who she'd been, just existing, present, at peace. She spent the long winter nights reading, John's journal, Sarah's letters from back east, books she'd ordered from Denver, and sometimes when the wind howled through the pines and the cabin creaked with cold, she'd hear John's voice. Not literally, not haunting her, just memory, strong and clear. "Finish this, Elle. Promise me." "I did," she'd whisper back. "It's finished. You can rest now." And in those moments she felt close to him again, connected across the distance of death. Not haunted, not grieving, just remembering, honoring, loving. And that was enough. Spring returned. The snows melted. Wildflowers bloomed. Elk calves were born in the valley, wobbly-legged and perfect. Sarah came back as promised, full of excitement. Her book was nearly finished. The university was funding a full research station, permanent buildings, equipment, support staff. The sanctuary was becoming something bigger than either of them had imagined. A model for wildlife conservation, a beacon of hope in a world that too often destroyed what it should protect. Elle helped where she could, guided the construction crews to build in places that wouldn't disturb the wildlife, made sure the new buildings blended with the landscape. But mostly she just watched. Let Sarah and her team do their work, stayed out of the way. Her job was simpler: patrol the boundaries, keep the mountain safe, be the guardian, the ghost watching over paradise. On a clear morning in June, a rider came up the trail. Elle saw him from a distance, recognized his bearing, his gray hair. Marshal Benjamin Thorne. She met him at the cabin, put on coffee. They sat on the porch looking out at the valley. "Long ride from Denver," Elle said. "Worth it to see this." Thorne gestured at the landscape. "You've built something remarkable here, Eleanor." "Sarah and her team built it. I just keep watch." "That's not what I hear. I hear you're the heart of this place, the reason it works." Elle shrugged. "I do what I can." Thorne smiled. "Always modest, always understated. That's what made you the best." "Made. Past tense. Is it?" He pulled an envelope from his coat. "I have something for you." Elle took it, opened it carefully. Inside was a badge, brand new, shining in the sunlight. Deputy U.S. Marshal, Eleanor Kincaid. "The offer stands," Thorne said. "Your badge, your job, anytime you want it." Elle looked at the badge for a long moment, felt the weight of it, the history, the years she'd worn one just like it. Then she handed it back. "I'm honored, Ben, truly. But my answer's the same. I'm done hunting men. This is where I belong now." "I figured you'd say that." He tucked the badge back in his coat. "But I had to try. The territory needs people like you." "The territory has people like you. That's enough." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, drinking coffee, watching the mountain. "How's Marcus?" Elle asked finally. "Serving his time, quiet, keeps to himself. He writes letters to his daughter. She doesn't write back." "Good. He asked about you once, wanted to know if you'd ever forgive him." "What did you tell him?" "That forgiveness wasn't mine to give, and probably not yours either. Some things can't be forgiven. They can only be lived with." Elle nodded slowly. "That's about right." Thorne stood to leave, shook her hand. "Take care of yourself, Eleanor. And this mountain. The world needs more places like this, more people like you." "I'm not special, Ben. I'm just someone who keeps her promises." "That's what makes you special." He rode away, back down the mountain, back to his work in Denver. And Elle returned to hers, patrolling, watching, protecting, being the ghost the mountain needed. Years passed. Elle grew older, slower, gray in her hair now, lines around her eyes, but still strong, still capable, still walking the boundaries every day. Sarah's research station thrived, published papers, brought in funding, trained new scientists. The sanctuary became famous, a success story, proof that damaged ecosystems could heal if given protection and time. Visitors came sometimes, carefully controlled, guided tours, educational programs. Elle avoided them mostly. Let Sarah handle that side of things. But sometimes she'd watch from a distance, see the wonder in people's eyes when they saw the elk herds, the healthy forests, the pristine streams, and she'd feel something warm in her chest. Pride, maybe. Satisfaction. This was John's legacy. Their legacy. Worth everything it had cost. On a cool autumn evening, Elle climbed to the ridge one last time. She was 45 now, feeling every year. Her knees ached, her back hurt, the high country taking its toll. But she needed to be here, tonight, on the anniversary, 10 years since John died. She knelt at his monument, the stone weathered now but still solid, the inscription clear. She'd brought fresh wildflowers, the last of the season. Purple columbine pressed carefully. She placed them on the stone, touched the engraved letters of his name. 10 years, she said softly. 10 years, and I still miss you every day. The wind whispered through the pines, gentle, warm. But I kept my promise, finished what you started. This mountain is safe now, protected forever. Your sacrifice meant something, John. It meant everything. She sat down on the rocks, watching the sunset, the sky turning gold and red and purple. Beautiful. Always beautiful. I'm getting old, she said to his memory. Not sure how many more years I have in me, but I'll stay as long as I can. Keep watch. Make sure nothing threatens this place. Silence. Just the wind. The distant call of an elk. Sarah says she'll take over when I can't do it anymore. She's good. Dedicated. She'll protect the mountain the way we did. The legacy will continue. Elle closed her eyes, feeling the peace settle over her like a blanket. I love you, she whispered. Still. Always. Nothing changed that. Not 5 years. Not 10. Not ever. And in that moment she felt something. Not John's voice. Not his presence. Just peace. Acceptance. The understanding that she'd done what she set out to do. She'd kept her promise, honored his sacrifice, protected what mattered. That was enough. That was everything. Elle stood slowly, her joints protesting. She wasn't as young as she used to be, but she was still here, still standing, still the guardian. She walked back down to her cabin as darkness fell, the stars emerging overhead, brilliant, eternal. Rebel waited in the corral, old now, ancient by horse standards, but still her companion, still loyal. Elle fed him, checked his water, the ritual unchanged by years. Inside the cabin she lit the lamp, made coffee, sat at her small table. John's journal lay open, the pages worn from countless readings. But tonight Elle didn't read. She just looked at the handwriting, remembering. Then she closed the journal, carefully, respectfully, and she pulled out a new blank book, one Sarah had given her, encouraged her to write in. Elle picked up a pen, thought for a moment, then began to write. My name is Eleanor Garrison. Some called me the ghost, but I was just a woman who loved a man, who made a promise, who kept it. This is the story of a mountain, and the people who died protecting it, and the ones who lived to see it saved. This is the story of justice, hard-earned and dearly bought. This is the story of how some secrets stay buried, and some promises are kept forever. She wrote late into the night, telling the story, all of it. The truth. For Sarah's book. For history. For anyone who might need to understand what happened here. Why this mountain mattered. Why John's death wasn't in vain. Why some things are worth fighting for, worth dying for, worth living for. And when she finally set down the pen, exhausted but satisfied, Elle looked out the window at the dark mountain. Her mountain. John's mountain. Their mountain. Protected. Forever. Some mountains hide secrets. Some mountains keep promises. This one did both. And Eleanor Garrison would guard it until her final breath. The ghost, the widow, the guardian. Home at last.